Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to a special video where we're going to be discussing the most notorious lineup changes and whether or not these bands should actually still be together or not. So we'll have a great discussion on that. I want to welcome my co-host here. I got Vito Fileccia. How you doing today, man?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right. Thanks for joining me here for this topic. You and I have often talked about these sort of things. In fact, one of the first ways that you and I met and talked was about Mötley Crüe and
Yes.
lineup changes that have been in there in particular. Again, one of the most notorious ones, Vince Neil being out, John Corabi coming in, and then, of course, Vince coming back and making an album you liked, Generation Swine. So we've had a lot of conversations on those things, and I thought it might be cool to get in and discuss that sort of thing. So I
Sure.
want to set some parameters up here, at least for the way that I'm going to be discussing this. When I talk about original members, I'm talking about people that were in place right or prior to the first album that they recorded. So certainly some of these bands will have members even before that, and then they'll say, oh, well, that guy's not technically an original member because the band goes back further. But if they didn't record and us music fans only know them from the debut album, that's sort of where I'm going with it. So we're going to keep it sort of general in that regard in the discussion. And also just in that different ideas sort of persist about like when it's okay to change a member, when it's not. I mean, most people will not, throw their hands up and cry if it's a bass player or a drummer that changes. I think we've seen that before. Would you agree with that?
In some cases,
In some
in
cases.
some cases, I don't want to get into a full discussion yet because I know you have your thing. But
Right.
again, you could bring up Mötley Crüe with that situation.
Yeah, you're right. When Tommy Lee was out, that was kind of a big deal for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And usually, I would not see that being a thing. In fact, for me, it wasn't a big deal, but there were a lot of people.
It was a little bit for me.
Yeah, it was for you. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's instances like that, but I have a thing where if only the, say, drummer is remaining,
Mhm.
then that usually bugs me. And of course, it really bugs me when there's no original members.
I'm right there with you.
Right?
I'm right there with you.
So now, some of the bands that are out touring right now that have no original members, yet some of these we'll talk about whether or not they, have a right to still be out there or not. But one of the big ones, Deep Purple, right?
Mm.
They've got three guys from their classic era lineup, so that justifies it to most people. But no original, or sorry, don't should say. Oh, I should take that back. It's not that they don't have any original. They still have Ian Pace on drums. Almost threw that off there. But a Foreigner has no original members out there. Jefferson Starship, no original members. Quiet Riot, great metal band. Was debut in the U.S. selling 6 million, first metal album to, I think to achieve #1 or do that sort of back then. Savatage, another band you and I both really love.
Yes.
Right? Still a lot of key guys in there, but John Oliva doesn't tour with them. He's on the sidelines, but he's still running it. Right.
Yes. So
when is that okay, right? So we'll talk more about that. And then big, famous prog band out there, Yes, which has no original members, but they still have Steve Howe in the group, who is a defining guitar player. So all those sort of artists that are out there. But the first one that I want to hit on here, which I think is probably one of the most famous ones ever debated here, is AC/DC and the shift from Bon Scott to Brian Johnson. So first, what are your thoughts on that? Were you a fan of Bon before Brian, or are you in one camp or the other?
I was a late AC/DC bloomer. I remember growing up. Dirty Deeds, is probably even today my favorite AC/DC album.
Okay,
but he died. He died, and I think really what solidified that is you come back after your singer dies with your biggest album ever.
Yeah, right. And the album before it was huge too. This was their biggest album at the time.
Yeah.
Highway to Hell, and then they return with this. Yeah.
So I think that right then and there, if there are any naysayers out there, let's even say Bon Scott left the band and he didn't pass away. AC/DC just stamped that out with, hey, we're back with our biggest album. Nothing's going to stop us. So you can't dispute it.
Yeah,
you can't dispute it.
I don't think you can either. But my big thing is right now, being out on the road, only Angus Young remains. So Cliff Williams, Phil Rudd, who are still listed as members, do not tour. And I argue whether they're even members. They came in, they played on the Power Up album, but they haven't been part of the band since the release of that in 2020. And you've got Angus out there. You've got some other guys. Is it really AC/DC at this point?
Well, I don't know offhand how old they are, but I venture to say they're late 60s, maybe early 70s.
Yeah, I think they're definitely up there.
And when I look at AC/DC, and I guess I can ask you this question too, who's the face of the band?
It's Angus.
Okay, and then the second thing is the voice. I would say today, the majority of the people going to see them relate Johnson's voice more than Bond's.
Right.
So similar to the whole LA Guns thing, you have the guitar player, you got the singer. What else do you need? You got the songs.
I think for the people, for people that are going to the show, that for them touring, playing live, I don't think most people care.
No.
But when I found out they were going out on the road with a new bass player and a new drummer, I don't know, that just it was a big turnoff to me.
I understand, but I'm just trying to think from Angus's point of view. I'm wondering if it was a business decision.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
So, and I believe he has his nephew on guitar.
He does. Yes.
Malcolm's son. It's Malcolm's son.
Yeah.
So, I kind of get that a little bit. I do understand what you're saying, but I would take that. For me, I'm on board with that.
Okay. I mean, they got Brian Johnson. As long as Brian is up there, when they booted Brian a number of years back, and the fact that they brought Axl Rose in, and I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan, I went and saw that. But I was like, they can't sustain this, right? And if they get just a regular no-name guy in there, or small, guy who hasn't really built up a name, it was Axl Rose that I think really brought in all the fans to see it, because that was just such a unique experience to have.
Yeah, it was probably the only way too they could sustain bringing in the stadium crowd,
right?
By bringing in another big name,
right?
I saw AC/DC, I think, just shortly before Brian left that tour. At MetLife or whatever it was, Giant Stadium at the MetLife at the time, and they were phenomenal. It was a great show. They sounded great. So, like I said, I'm okay with it. The Axl thing, it was great to see. Right. I was curious myself, see how Axl, will he show up on time? Will he be a professional? And he did. And he looks like he did a great job. But for me, I don't know if I can accept that.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if they had continued, I don't think I would have accepted it either. But as a fill-in, it was very cool. I just wish it had been Brian Johnson is fired from the group, and then they got a replacement singer, and nobody knew. Like, it was Brian, he can't do it. He's got the hearing issue. He has to step back, and they got a fill-in guy. It would have been far better, more acceptable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they found a way to do special hearing monitors in his ears so that he doesn't have to have the loud sounds but can hear what's going on. And now he's back out on the road, and I think that's great.
And the videos I've seen, they sound good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the big key thing. If the replacement guys and everyone that comes in and it sounds good and it sounds like the band, then I think most people are willing to accept.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, it's when the members change that I think the fans have a hard time accepting it. So, I don't know, are you a fan of Iron Maiden?
Yes.
Yeah, so when Bruce Dickinson is out of the band, Blaze Bayley comes in, I happen to really love that era of the band, but I mean, his voice was so different
Yes.
than Bruce. I can understand why a lot of people didn't dig it.
Yeah, it was. I'm not a. I'm a Iron Maiden fan. I'm not. I didn't upset. I didn't lose sleep over it.
Mhm.
But it wasn't the same for me.
Yeah.
But I do like it, and I like Blaze Bayley. I love the solo stuff too. But it was just a different band. I was surprised they even went in that direction, because to me it was a total 180 the other way. Whereas Judas Priest basically got a clone,
Right.
so to
Yeah.
kind of keep with the sound. So yeah, it was different for me. It was different.
I mean, you bring up a good point with that. Judas Priest being another one, switching from Rob Halford over to Tim Ripper Owens. But
Yeah.
in both cases, the singers left on good terms. They weren't fired. They did farewell tours. They said they announced they're leaving, and people got to see them. And I think it made for a good transition into the new singer. Not everybody came along for the ride. It's not like when Van Halen, David Lee Roth quits the band at the peak, right?
Yeah.
The band has just released 1984. It's their biggest selling album at the time. They're on top of the world. And he quits. What's Van Halen going to do? And fans are just like, how do you do that? How do you quit the biggest band in the world at that time? But then, they come back with 5150, Sammy Hagar, but it sounds different.
Yeah, but they go through the roof again.
They go through the roof. They went from being more of the party band to having ballads and other stuff and singing about much deeper, meaningful things on here. There certainly was still plenty of sex, drugs, and rock and roll style lyrics for the 80s, but that was an interesting one because the singer quit and they were at the top of their game. And normally when that happens, a band isn't going to survive that, but they did.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder, because I think most people associate bands with the voice of the band. I'm wondering in this case, it was the guitar sound that was really the forefront of that band. Don't get me wrong, Roth is one of the greatest frontmen of all time, but did Eddie have more power with the fans over David? And I think that's what it was.
Absolutely. I mean, and they proved it throughout the whole career of Van Halen and the number of singers. I mean, even when they changed to Gary Cherone, they may not have remained as large as they were with Hagar, and certainly not as big as with Roth, but that was also the era. That was the late 90s. I mean, no band that sounded like that was doing well. And yet they were still able to go out and sell out arenas and stuff. The album wasn't moving, but they had brought back in a lot of David Lee Roth era songs that Sammy Hagar wouldn't perform. So the fans were eating it up. They were so excited to hear those songs live from Van Halen again when they hadn't heard it. That in and of itself made for a big deal.
Yeah, I saw that tour. Matter of fact, I think that was the first tour that Creed came out on the scene. I'm probably one of the few people in this world. I love that album.
Oh yeah,
I love Gary Cherone. I thought it was great.
I love Gary Cherone. I thought he was fantastic for the band.
I did too. Apparently, we were in the minority.
Right.
So, but yeah, it was. I don't know. It was a weird time, like you said. Grunge was hitting in, but yes, they were selling out arenas left and right. But again, it was Eddie. It was Eddie.
Yeah, the whole draw. The bottom line with that is, and I think that's a classic case. I mean, they changed out Michael Anthony, and nobody seemed to care.
No,
I mean, the fans went nuts, but again, they still sold out all their tours. It wasn't a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the reunion with Roth, but then Michael Anthony wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, and I saw that tour as well, but they replaced Michael Anthony with somebody who can play.
That's true, and could sing.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I didn't like it because it was Eddie Van Halen's son. And I didn't yet know what he can do. And I have to say, even the whole time that he was in Van Halen, I didn't know what he could do. It wasn't until he did Mammoth.
Yeah.
I was like, my God, this guy is actually phenomenal.
Yeah.
he's Eddie Van Halen level, meaning in terms of the amount of instruments he plays, drums, bass, keyboards, guitar. I mean, he can shred.
And well.
Yes.
And he does it well.
And he doesn't sound like a clone of his father either.
No.
But he plays really well. Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people had a hard time dealing with him coming out because of his name. So everything was because of his name. And I hope moving forward, I hope he gets a little bit more respect for himself and not who his father was. And it seems like the tide may be turning on him a little bit, where people are looking at him more favorably now.
I agree. I think so. I mean, everyone was really interested when Mammoth first dropped their album. And when I say they, it's really a solo album for them. But when that came out, it was what's he going to do? What's the former Van Halen member, the son of Eddie Van Halen, going to do? And I think it was both what people expected, but also not. I think there were a lot of people that wanted it to sound just like Van Halen, and it doesn't quite. And a lot of people that just expected it to sound like modern rock and roll, and it's not quite that either. It's something in between. And I found that to be really refreshing. It's, you know, he made it his own thing, but he brought the legacy. Yeah,
and it was his influences.
Right.
He grew up on all the 90s and 2000s stuff, so his music, you know, referenced that. That's what it reflected. And I guess, like you said, people were probably thinking, oh, it's going to sound like his dad.
Yeah.
They were all bent out of shape about it.
Exactly.
But no, I think he's great. I think he's great.
All right, so we touched on it at the beginning, but didn't really get into it as much. And I know Mötley Crüe being one of your biggest or your favorite bands, so I do want to hit on the whole change from Vince Neil to John Corabi. How did you feel about that when that took place?
Well, first I was shocked because I think were they coming off Decade of Decadence at that point?
Yeah, and Dr. Feelgood being their last major album, which sold 6 million copies, and Decade of Decadence did 2 or 3 million copies right out of the gate. So, you know, it's hard for bands, or not often, that a band has a big hit off of a greatest hits, right?
Yeah.
Decade of Decadence with Primal Scream was as big a song as anything off of Dr. Feelgood. And they're selling millions of copies of that, and then they can Vince Neil.
Well, I guess like they say, it depends who you ask.
Right,
you know?
Right.
I was a little surprised. Well, I was shocked, really. But when I look back at it now, I was kind of happy it happened, because I think Vince released a killer album.
Absolutely.
And I think Mötley released a killer album. Now, and I'm not that guy that says, oh, well, they should have changed the name of the band, because I don't really care about that. Yeah. It was a great album. But like you said, in that band, it was the voice. People associated Mötley with the voice.
Right.
And then the songs were second.
Right.
That's how I feel.
I agree. But the thing is that actually Nikki Sixx writes most of everything. Yeah. And in reality, maybe you were talking about Tommy Lee, but when I was thinking of you saying you might have a problem with a bassist leaving, I'm thinking, you know, if Nikki Sixx was out of Mötley Crüe wouldn't sound the way they sound.
Well, I think if Nikki was out of Mötley, there would be no Mötley.
that too, right? He would make sure of it.
Yeah, but it didn't really bug me as much. The only thing that bothered me was they canceled their tour with Corabi, so I never got a chance to see them.
Yeah.
But I was happy when Vince came back. It was kind of a big deal for me with Vince gone. Right. I was happy we got 2 great albums out of it. I even liked Vince's second album, Carved in Stone. I dug it.
Yeah, I dug it at the time. I mean, it was so different, so night and day different from the debut Exposed. And you're right, that's like the greatest Mötley Crüe album never made. I mean, if there's anything that is a follow-up to Dr. Feelgood, it's that album.
Yes, I agree. So I would say in that split, Vince came out the winner.
Yeah. I mean, he actually had hits off of that. Sister of Pain. Yeah. He had the song in Encino Man.
Yeah.
Invited, but you're
invited. Yeah.
You know, yeah. So there's actually 2 hit songs on there that still get played on radio. Even though the album didn't really sell a whole lot. I don't remember if it went gold. Might not have, but I remember it was sort of like both albums did about the same. Because this album only went gold.
Yeah.
When you're coming off of 6 million in sales and your next one only does gold, gold's nothing. 500,000 copies is nothing to sneeze at, but it was a big drop.
It was.
I think it was the time in the era.
Yeah.
This album sounded so much of the era, but was totally Mötley Crüe. The guitars, the heaviness. I just thought this thing here sounded like Mötley Crüe. Every Mötley Crüe album has a different sound.
Yeah.
So this one got heavier and mixed in the current things that were going on. But Mick Mars was all over this thing.
Yeah. And in my opinion, and you could dispute me if you want, that album right there, sonically, is the best Mötley Crüe album, sonically.
I think sonically I have to go with this one, but I do hear what you're saying. Both of these have that big sound, and a lot of that I think is the Bob Rock production.
Yes.
It's Tommy Lee and his drums. It's they built the cave or whatever to get the amplification of that sound that was just huge.
Yeah.
And you're right. In this instance, each member of Mötley Crüe, and this is rare for just a regular hard rock band that's not like a Kiss, where each member sings and each member has an identity and all of that sort of stuff. But Tommy Lee's drums are huge. Nicky, who doesn't really play the most complex bass lines or anything, but he writes so much of the music and is such a leader in the group. Vince being the sound of the band because he's the front man that's in there. And while almost no recognition goes to Mick Mars, man, without his guitar sound, his slide, that integration of the blues into their hard rock sound, they wouldn't be who they are.
I agree. I
think right now you might have Vince and Nicky and Tommy, but without Mick Mars there, the sound that John 5, the new guitar player that's taken over for Mick Mars, the band sounds nothing like themselves.
I don't know. Have you
seen them with John 5 yet?
I've seen them twice already with him. Okay. It's different, obviously. But I guess this falls in line with what this whole discussion is about. Mick is gone now.
Yeah.
But Mick is gone. Is he gone because there's infighting, or is he gone because he's really not well? And I saw the last farewell tour, and he wasn't well.
No, he's not. And you're absolutely right. It is definitely a health issue. He couldn't be there if he wanted to be there.
I agree. I think they could have handled it better.
Yeah.
It would have been nice if they all got together in a room, made a statement, say, hey, listen, he's still with us, but he physically can't do this.
Well, so we're going to have a statement they made at the beginning, and then they later said he's fired.
Yeah, it went haywire. And then who started suing who, and it's typical Mötley drama,
Yes.
But I do like John 5 as a guitar player.
I do too.
I think when he plays these songs live, he tries to do it as true to the recordings, at least. And he's such a good guitar player. He can do it. And he does. But his sound, to me, his guitar tone is a little too thin for Mötley. He needs to beef it up a little bit. If he did that, I don't think anybody would, true fans wouldn't have a problem with it. And maybe he could take the guitar and go a little lower with it. It's a little too high up for me.
Well, for me, he's maybe too technical. When I hear him play lead, and it's not the new stuff, you're right, he absolutely does the Mick Mars stuff justice. But if we talk about the EP that came out, Canceled, the 3 tracks that are on there, when he does a guitar solo, it sounds like the same kind of solo that we heard on Rob Zombie's stuff. It's very technical, running up and down the neck, and in my opinion, doesn't have any feel to it. It doesn't evoke emotion.
Yeah.
Wild what it is, but I know that he can play stuff that sounds just like what Mick Mars did, because he played a lot of stuff with David Lee Roth on the DLR Band album that was phenomenal. It was style sounding guitar lead work. And I'm thinking, why is he not playing what he loves and in that style because he's now in a band that needs that? Is he trying to bring his own stamp?
It's a good question, and it may be. Again, we don't know. We're not in that room.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it may be those guys just saying, "Hey, man, just do you."
Yeah.
Just do you.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, Nicky has always been about going with the new next big thing.
Flavor of the month.
Flavor of the month. You know, they want to be Kiss even though they're not Kiss. It's like, you know, and even Aerosmith did it to a degree. Once they got out of the 70s, they changed with all the styles of music through the 80s into the 90s and the early 2000s. They were doing that. You know, for the most part, it worked for them. But with Mötley, he had such a defining sound for the first 5 albums. Even if I still think this one here is relatable to those first 5 in terms of the sound, heavier, but still having that. And it was everything after that. It was a night and day shift that they did at Generation Swine. At the time, yes, I enjoyed it. It was better sounding than the other bands that were coming out with stuff at that time.
Yeah,
I liked it. But it's an album I just don't go back to.
Yeah, it's definitely the sore thumb of their catalog. But I like to think they redeemed themselves with Saints.
Oh yeah, I think they redeemed themselves with what is the Tattoo album?
Yeah, I love that album too.
Yeah.
I always forget about that.
Produced by Mike Klink from Guns N' Roses.
Yeah. But no Tommy. To me, that album is probably, I never remember it because it doesn't have that drums. Castillo is just, everybody raves about Randy Castillo. To me, he was just a numbers drummer, you know?
He's a good drummer, but he's not a standout drummer.
Yeah, agreed.
And you're right, Tommy, man, he hits so hard.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's ones like that. I want to also hit on Savatage, because again, I know you're a big fan of Savatage. They've reunited. Yeah. They're out on the road. They've played a couple festival dates already, and I know they've lined up some shows outside of festivals now. Nothing here for the States. It's all over in Europe. But they do say potentially 2026, they're going to be doing a wider tour and hitting North America. So we'll have an opportunity to see them. But the big shift from John Oliva, the original frontman, big iconic album that they had, Hall of the Mountain King, Streets came, or a couple more came in there, Gutter Ballet and Streets. Yeah. But then they did this, Edge of Thorns. And Zach Stevens, the guy that replaces John Oliva, was handpicked by John Oliva and sounds night and day different. Now, Zach Stevens is a professional singer. So you went from having a metal guy who sang and was very unique, but not maybe a great singer, to Zach Stevens, who is a great singer, but not necessarily metal. At least that's how I took it.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, I think in terms of sales and stuff, this is actually their most successful album.
Yeah.
It's also the most sort of radio friendly. This was when John Oliva took it over and said, Savatage is a brand and I'm going to run it. And he did. He continued to write with them. He continued to play keyboards with them.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really part of the band. He was off doing Dr. Butcher and stuff.
Yeah.
So what did you think of that when that happened?
Wow. I'm a little speechless right now.
I was just going to say, man, I can't believe you're speechless on that.
I have so many thoughts in my head about this. And I don't want to be that guy. So,
okay.
And I think that's why I'm kind of speechless. So I could just tell you my truth and what I know.
Yeah, right.
From the guys themselves.
Yeah, right. That's
I think John needed a break.
Mm-hmm.
And you're correct. He handpicked Zach. But the goal with Edge of Thorns for that album was to write an album that showcased his brother's talents.
Mm-hmm.
It was a purely guitar showcase album. And I think they did a hell of a job with it.
I agree.
Chris Caffrey might as well be an original member in my eyes.
He's been there since '87.
And he's been flying the flag he's been the one that's been out there the last 20 years going, I want to do this.
Right.
I want to do this.
And playing this stuff when he goes out and plays live, his solo material sounds like Savatage stuff. I can listen to it and imagine John Oliva or Zach singing it. Chris, unfortunately, doesn't have the best voice. So I listened to his solo stuff, which I have all the albums. And it's just one of those things that I'm like, oh, man, this sounds like old school Savatage. But then you hear the vocals, and it's just not quite right because I'm expecting to hear Oliva or Zach come into it.
I agree. I think the thing that really shocked me the most was the death of Chris Oliva.
Oh, that was hardcore, man.
That was. I was really bothered by that. I didn't know how they would continue, which they obviously did. And,
well, they brought in Alex Skolnick from Testament for the Handful of Rain album, which I love. I thought that album was so good.
Yes.
And then unfortunately, he only agreed to come in and do the one album and tour because he was good friends with Chris Oliva and wanted to, do a legacy for sort of a thing, a tribute. And so immediately after that, they then changed again to Al Pitrelli.
Yes. And that's the one thing I think they always had is they always had top-notch guitar players. I happen to think that, again, I go back to Caffrey. He does the Chris Oliva stuff justice. He's been there for a long time. I really do think Chris Caffrey is a very underrated guitar player. I think he's fantastic. Pitrelli, again, I mean, his whole discography speaks for itself. He's a fantastic one.
But most people don't know who he is, right?
Which it's mind-boggling to me, really.
He, in between leaving Savatage, he played with Megadeth. And then returned to Savatage for their final album.
Yeah. And don't forget, too, he played with Widowmaker with Dee Snider.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah. And that's a great album.
Yeah. He's a fantastic guitar player. I'm going to throw one more at you, too.
Okay.
I think he was in Vertex with Stephen Pearcy.
You might be right. I can't recall offhand. That was a weird one.
Yeah.
Stephen Pearcy from Rat doing industrial music.
Yeah. But to go back, to bring everything back to your original question, how I feel about it, I love Savatage so much.
Yeah.
I understand why they're doing what they're doing. John actually can't get on the road right now.
I do too.
He will be back. I know for a fact he will be back. But I would take a Savatage cover band endorsed by John Oliva to go out and tour.
Well, that's kind of what this is. I mean, there's no original members left. But like you said, Chris Cafferty, who's been there since '87 and flown the flag for Savatage ever since, 25 years now. Johnny Lee Middleton on bass may just be a bass player, but he's been there since '86 and he's never left. He's, in fact, out of all the guys there, he's the longest serving member because Chris Cafferty was out briefly doing Dr. Butcher with John Oliva and then returning. You've got Jeff Plate since 1994 on drums. Al Pitrelli came in 1995 and has been their guitar player, through that.
Off and on, yeah. So, I mean, the majority of that band's been there 30 years.
Yeah.
And what's their career span? 40?
It's 1979.
Oh, 79.
46 years.
Okay. So 75% of their career has been the guys that you're seeing today. Yeah. So I'm okay with that. It's perfect.
I am too.
And they're recorded, it's not like they're not on recordings. They got recordings and everything. So it's for me, it's perfect.
So let's flip to the opposite side of that. And I don't know if you're a fan of this band or not.
Okay.
But Savatage being run by an original member, John Oliva, but not there. Like you said, fully endorsed, put this together, is writing a new album that these guys are going to record. He will play on it. And the guys that are out there are guys that have been there for a very long time. Okay. Foreigner is another one of those groups. Mick Jones hasn't been with the band for 3 or 4 years now. There's another guitar player that he selected to take his place to play live. Kelly Hansen, the vocalist, who's been there for 20 years. 2005, he came in. Unfortunately, he just announced he's going to leave the band.
Mm-hmm.
They're now bringing in a new guy. Well, actually, not bringing in a new guy. The guitar player that Mick Jones picked is also going to take over on lead vocals.
Yeah.
And again, so still being run by Mick Jones. But all the guys that are in there only go back to, I can't read the date on the back of this, but this album here, Can't Slow Down. So these guys there, I think actually most of them are gone at this point, but there's Kelly Hansen and there's Jeff Pilson. And Jeff Pilson is definitely still there from Dokken, right? He has been the musical director on stage, coordinating everybody and having it all happen. So these guys have been there for 20 years and it is being run and directed by Mick Jones. But when you go out and you see Foreigner, there's no original guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge Foreigner fan. I saw them several years ago with Heart and Cheap Trick. They're a killer band. You can't deny that a lot of these guys that are in these bands are fantastic musicians, first and foremost.
Yeah.
But again, just in the conversation that we're having today and what you just informed me of with Foreigner, I don't know. To me, it's like a traveling act.
It's a tribute band, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know if, maybe it should be called Foreigner Experience or something, so I don't know if I would totally accept that if I were a Foreigner fan, if I would accept that.
Yeah, and I'm on that. As long as Mick Jones was there, I was accepting it. And as long as they were recording new albums, but they only made one album in the last 20 years. So that has really bothered me that they are, in fact, just a tribute band because they're not producing. I mean, they've recorded one new song here, one new song there. They did an acoustic album. They've done an album with an orchestra, but they just keep re-recording and re-releasing the hits with the lineup. And to me, you're not being creative. You're not making your own legacy.
I agree.
So I have a problem when bands change members, but then rest on the laurels of the other original guys that created the sound.
I agree with you. And I guess I'm going to maybe flip the script here.
Okay.
And ask you a question.
Sure.
How do you feel now about Quiet Riot?
Yeah. So, okay. I have a whole slew of issues with Quiet Riot.
Okay.
First and foremost, nobody that's in the lineup is original, but if you know Metal Health, the album shows the picture of Rudy Sarzo, but Rudy Sarzo didn't play on all of that album. In fact, Metal Health, and I want to say Come On Feel the Noise, but definitely the song Metal Health, that's played by, is it
Chuck
Sean?
Wright.
Who is it? Chuck Wright. Exactly. So Chuck Wright, who was a part of the band, was booted out in favor of Rudy Sarzo because Rudy Sarzo, his name is associated with that album and a couple of the other albums. And they needed some name recognition because John Bannerly passed away, right? But the people that are playing in Quiet Riot today, it's like a little super group. You've got Rudy Sarzo, who has played with everyone, including White Snake, and can't even think of half of the other artists that he's been a part of. You have Jizzy Pearl in there from Love Hate, who also fronted Rat. And again, he's done a number of different other projects. Adler's Appetite, with Steven Adler, but like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
Forgetting his first name, Grossi.
Alex Grossi.
Alex Grossi. So he was the last guitar player, part of the lineup with Kevin Dubrow before Kevin Dubrow died. So that was him with Frankie Bannerly. I forget who was playing on bass. Might have even been Chuck Wright.
Yeah, I think it was.
But like Sean McNabb has been in there. So it's like Kevin Dubrow gave the blessing for these guys to continue on. And in my opinion, if you're the last standing members and you played with original guys who picked you to be part of that group, it's okay. But also at a certain point, what are we going to see? People who are going to see it might only own the mental health album or the condition critical album, right? They're going to go hear those songs. And nobody who's up there, or at least for a time, nobody who was up there played on it, with Rudy Sarzo coming back because they found they couldn't get booking. And that's the only reason they had to give him a big part of the share, because he is now the name recognition to it. They were trying to continue on, and I forget who had come in his place. Coming in on drums is the guy from Typo Negative.
Yeah, Johnny Kelly.
Thank you, Johnny Kelly. So again, a little super group of guys that I would go see for who the guys are, but I wouldn't be going because it's called Quiet Riot. I'm a fan of Jizzy Pearl, so I'm going to go for that reason.
I'm wondering where we stand as fans. Would you consider us super fans of music?
Yeah.
So the majority of the people that are at a casino and they get offered, hey, Quiet Riot's playing here. You want to go see them? Here's some free tickets, you know?
Right.
And they go. Do those people really know?
No, not at all.
They just know the song.
They just know the songs and somebody's singing it, and they think that guy up there on stage is Kevin Dubrow. They don't even know the guy's name. They just think that that's not necessarily the original, but they think that the big people that are up there, the guitar player and stuff, that's Quiet Riot. And they don't realize that the bass player is the only one who's up there, and he only played on, I think, the first 2 albums.
Yeah. And we know, I mean, Jizzy did an album with them.
Yes.
Which when I don't even know if you can even find it anymore.
It never got pressed to CD. It only came out digitally, and then it retracted. And I don't remember why. They didn't like the sound. There was some problem with it. And so after like 10 days of it being up and available, it was gone.
Wow.
And I luckily had downloaded it, and then I was able to convert them to CDA and rip to CD. So I
nice.
But like, you cannot find that album.
And then Alex, I think, has done 2 albums with them. I think the last 2.
He's done 3 because he also did Rehab with Kevin Dubrow.
Oh, okay.
And then he has done the 2 new ones that they tried to do, and that's with Frankie Bannerly, and it's before Jizzy Pearl was part of it. They had 2 different singers doing those albums, and I didn't care for that. That's James Durbin.
Yes,
right. So the singer that they had, which I actually liked a lot better, and I forget his name, he only recorded a couple covers, but re-recorded hits that you could listen to like on the website when they were trying to promote.
Was it that Painter guy?
Yeah,
like from the movie.
Yes, yeah, it's him, right? Does the Painter guy, and I liked him. I thought he sounded great. And then they didn't go with him. They brought in James Durbin from American Idol or whatever. And I don't like his voice at all. I don't think he sounds at all in the vein of Kevin Dubrow, or what you would expect from a Quiet Riot. I think they were trying to bring in newer fans, younger ones, because this was the metal guy from American Idol, and brought some people. But it just didn't work for me. I don't like those albums at all. I think the lyrics are cheesy as fuck. And I can't get behind it musically, lyrically. I hear some of it and say, yeah, that's Quiet Riot. If Kevin Dubrow were singing it, this would be a Quiet Riot song. It's got the style, but I gotta really stretch.
So would you say also Quiet Riot? Maybe this should be the Quiet Riot experience.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, I would go to it because they're a super group. I went to see the Dio Experience, I think it's called, right? When he was a hologram. Right? So I went to go see the hologram, but I didn't go because of the hologram. I went because they had Craig Goldie on guitar, one of his original guitar players who I actually really like. And they had Tim Ripper Owens singing some of the lead, because Ronnie James Dio only appeared as a hologram like every 3rd song. And I forget who the other guy was, but the other singer, they had 2 lead singers that would come out and sing. And then, Lonnie Ogan? No, so Ani Logan.
Oni Logan.
Yeah, Honey Logan
Yeah.
from Lynch Mob.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So he was there. Tim Ripper Owens was there. Craig Goldie, and I forget the other guys. And they were all people that had played with him, except the two singers, of course. So the band was guys that had played with Ronnie James Dio. I could care less about the hologram, and in fact, it was kind of cheesy. But when the other guys came out, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And it's put together by his wife, and it's sanctioned and all that sort of stuff. But it was like seeing a tribute group.
Yeah. What about I'm sorry, I don't want to drive the conversation. This is your thing, but now I'm starting to think of all these bands.
Right.
I guess maybe we'll call this one the Sunset Strip Trinity or something.
Okay.
You got your Faster Pussycat, LA Guns, and Enough's Enough.
Right. Okay. My thoughts on those. So Enough's Enough without Donnie V is a little hard to accept. However, Chip's Enough and the 3 albums or so that he's done without Donnie V, I've really enjoyed. And he's gotten better and better vocally. The first one, it was a little rough. The second one, I think, was a way better. And the third one, I actually enjoy. It sounds like Enough's Enough to me. He's writing in that style. He's singing in that style. I'm okay with it, man. He was a key driving force of the group.
I sort of agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
I do like, I love Chip. I love Enough's Enough, one of my favorite bands. I think I'm happy I still get albums.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree with you. I like their album. I like his albums as Enough's Enough. Live now, though, after seeing him for the last couple of years with, I don't know if you know, like Tori and Tony, those were the two, they're all gone.
Yeah, I know.
So it's just Chip and 3 guys that look like they came from Dragon Force. It just, it doesn't, I'm having an issue. I'm having an issue with it live.
I agree. And I'm that way with another one of those artists that's Bullet Boys. That the only original guy's the singer, and the musically what's up there, he just hires a bunch of guys and they sound like a pop punk group as opposed to what they sounded like on their first 3.
Yeah. I think I have a hard time with Mark's just overall personality.
Okay.
Yeah, I do, every time they do release an album or he releases an album, I buy it. You know, just to keep the collection going.
And you're immediately disappointed when you listen to it.
I am very disappointed. But you know what? He's like this rock and roll hype man, like, I got this great song and album coming out, and and I fall for it every time.
Yeah, I know. I do that a lot too. One of the other ones you mentioned, Faster Pussycat, only having Tammy Down is the front man, left in the group. And for a while, they were an industrial band.
Yes.
That was wrong. They never should have been called Faster Pussycat during that period, the same way that Lynch Mob shouldn't have been called Lynch Mob when they did rap metal. They did an album called Smoke This, where the guy, and they were doing like new metal.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, so the bands that keep the name and don't sound at all like who they used to be and only have one original member in the group, maybe not even a vocalist, those are the ones that are the tough pill to swallow for me.
Okay. Faster for me.
Yeah.
I understand what you're coming from with the industrial thing.
Right.
I think Tammy was doing, I think it was called Pig. The Newly Deads. The Newly Deads. And I think what happened was promoters wanted Faster back.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to get rid of his band. So they kind of just took the image, changed the name of the band, and then they started getting paid again.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was completely a money thing.
Yeah. But moving forward to today, I think the band he has, even though the guitar players have been changing, I think the band he has today is phenomenal. I love them better than the original band. I think the songs they're putting out, quality material. And, Sandbam, the new guitar player who's been with Godsmack and Dark, all over. I really think the addition of him to the band 5 years ago has really catapulted Tammy into doing something, really locking in. So I'm okay with it. I love it.
With the three studio songs, the singles that they released, something Ghost, I can't remember the name of it, but it
like
was
a ghost, like a ghost,
like a ghost. Oh my God, that is one of the best songs they've ever written.
Yeah,
I love it. The cover of Pirate Love, I love that. That's the Heartbreak, right? The Johnny Thunders and the Heartbreak.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of their songs.
Nola.
But they're finally sounding like Faster Pussycat again.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do. I know a lot of these songs were written 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but I think they handed it over to Sam to say, hey, like, Faster Pussycat this up for us, you know? And they're just I think Tammy is a really talented songwriter, because when I look back at their catalog, there's really not much I don't like when it comes to their songs.
Yeah, when it comes to those first three albums, I love them entirely.
I even like the industrial one.
You like the Power in the Glory Hole?
I love that album. I love it.
I love his voice. I do.
I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I love his voice.
Yeah.
Well, pulling this back over to some of the bigger bands, let's say, obviously the ones we just talked about are big in our world and the glam metal world and stuff. But I wanted to hit on ones. I'm not even sure that you're big fans of these or not because of your feelings for Foreigner, but Styx, the progressive punk rock group, right? Dennis DeYoung, their keyboardist, who wrote some of their biggest hits. He had more number ones or top tens than Tommy Shaw, right? We all know Tommy Shaw and the glam metal from Damn Yankees. So he's still there, but Dennis DeYoung is out, and they brought in Lawrence Gowan, a Canadian artist, keyboardist, who had success in Canada. And he's now been there for almost 25 years. And I think some of the stuff they're doing, in fact, their last studio album, Crash of the Crown, I think is a top 3 album in their entire catalog. I mean, this thing blew me away. And yet we only have one original guy. We have James Young, the guitar player. We still have Tommy Shaw, but Tommy Shaw didn't come in until like their 5th album or maybe even 6th album. 1975, he joins the group. Now he's there. I think Tommy Shaw is probably the biggest name still in the group because of his success, not only with the hits he wrote, Blue Collar Man and Renegade and stuff like that. He was always the harder edge guy of the group. There's a lot of people that just can't get behind the band without Dennis DeYoung. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. Nothing else.
I think, when I was younger, I Paradise Theater was a fantastic album. They kind of lost me after the Mr. Roboto thing.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Dennis DeYoung has got like that powerhouse voice, like a Steve Perry. It's like, what do you do here? And like you said, I don't really know much of the newer Styx stuff. I don't know I think the new singer does not sound anything like Dennis DeYoung.
He doesn't, yeah.
Whereas like Journey got a guy who sounded just like Steve Perry. It's like you said, Tommy's there. He wrote a couple songs. He's been there for 50 years. I mean, he might as well be an original member as far as I'm concerned. The drummer passed away, right? I believe.
And the bass player
comes in and out, right?
He's part of the group, but he doesn't play with them.
Yeah, but he'll like show up every once in a while, play a song or two, and leave. So, but I think he's not well.
He's not well either. It's a health thing.
Yeah.
But he does. Every time they're going to film a video or a live album, he shows up and plays an encore or something.
And what did you say about the other guitar? Young? Is he original?
Young. He's original from 1972.
Yeah. So, I mean.
And he sang a bunch of lead songs early on in the group.
I don't know. You know what? Just from what we spoke about and not being the biggest Styx fan, I'll give him a pass. I'll say, go ahead. You can carry on in the Styx name and enjoy yourselves.
All right. And then I want to hit on another progressive rock group, Styx, because they have no original members in their lineup.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because you said Styx again.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes,
That's
I want
what.
to talk about the band. Yes,
Yeah.
because they have no original members in their lineup, and they still have Steve Howe, who came in 1970. So he's been there 55 years.
Wow.
And I mean, on and off again, there was Trevor Rabin that came in the 80s, and they had their biggest stuff with Owner of a Lonely Heart without him. But I mean, the guy goes back that far. The keyboardist recorded the album Drama, and it's Jeff Downs from Asia. So Jeff Downs from Asia is now in there. He was part of the group in 1980. And then you got other various guys that have come in, you know, in the 90s or later. But they have a classic guy. They have one of the most defining sounding members that they ever had in their whole career, who I would say, yes, being a band that's more defined by the instrumentation of the group than the vocalist, although John Anderson, huge part to their sound. So changing from John Anderson, their lead singer in 1980, to Trevor Horn, and then changing to Benoit David in the early 2000s, recording one album with him, but their current vocalist, John Davison, who they've made 3 albums with, getting ready to make another one. All of these guys sounding like John Anderson to some degree. But that's a big thing, you know, changing your singer. Changing from Steve Howe to Trevor Rabin in the 80s when they had their biggest hit with Owner of a Lonely Heart ended up being a huge positive thing. People accepted it for some reason.
Yeah. Again, I'm not a big Yes fan.
Yeah.
Obviously, playing guitar, as you know, I know who Steve Howe is.
Right.
He's a phenomenal guitar player. I don't know how I feel about that. I think all those changes happened because the band has been around since like the beginning of time. So not everybody's going to stay.
Right.
But as long as the band is trying to continue and put out new material with what you have,
yeah,
I'm okay. I'm fine with that because you're not, like you said, like Foreigner was living off the laurels of their past. At least Yes is like, all right, we got a new guy in. Hey, we got to record something new. We got to get something out there to showcase this person that we have now. I'm okay with that. You know, you're putting you're putting this person's name into their legacy of moving forward. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, and that's even how I feel about Quiet Riot, because they've continued to record, and I want them to record now with the current lineup that has Jimmy Pearl, Johnny Kelly, and you know, Rudy Sarzo back in the lineup and whatnot. So it's like, if they do that, that's fine. I'm okay with these bands as long as they continue to record and they're just not live touring entities.
Yeah, or at least do a song, something. Just release something. And I would agree with you. Yes, do something. You have this band. You're going out every weekend. You're playing festivals. You're doing casinos, fairs, whatever you're doing. But release something that's your own, so you can continue on with that name.
Yeah, build your own.
Yeah, and so I agree with you with that. I would probably handle the Quiet Riot experience a lot better if they release something with those 4 guys.
Yeah. Well, did you hear recently that White Snake, the current lineup of White Snake, Miss David Coverdale, will go out and play a festival as under White Snake Experience? So they have Dino Jalusic fronting the group, which David Coverdale hired for the last tour to flesh out his vocals, but has alluded to ridiculously that he thinks Dino Jalusic could take over the mantle of White Snake. And I kind of wonder if that's not where this is going.
It's kind of White Snake's a real perfect example. Look at all the lineup changes that they've had over the years. And then you get to the 87 album, which to me was like the band. That was the most powerful band. Vandenberg leaves, then you get Steve Vai in. Yeah. That piques my interest. I'm like, all right, I'll go check that out, you know? Right. But I mean, no, you can't. No. It's you can't David Coverdale.
That's right. The band is David Coverdale. To me, it would be the same thing as Van Halen going out on the road to do a show. I love Joe Satriani, who was supposed to do that tribute tour, but it's not Van Halen.
Yeah, it's like, you know, it's like the whole Savatage thing. I get John's not there, but at least you got a guy singing that's been on 5 albums already. So you can't do that.
Yeah.
To me, that's where you have to end the line. You cannot have these guys singing songs just because. And you know that's where Kiss is going to wind up going. Kiss is going to wind up hiring 4 clowns to go out like them and say, well, we said it's okay.
That's right.
But it's not okay.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's my opinion. Maybe your fan base will feel differently. You know, I just can't do that.
I mean, I think it's going to be even worse when you have the avatars.
But to me, that's a show. That's something more entertaining. It's like going to see Tommy on Broadway.
Oh, right.
That's different.
It's still tribute.
but it's something that the band created.
Yeah.
If Gene Simmons and Paul says, hey, we found we're holding an audition for 4 guys, and then once we pick them, we're going to put makeup on and send them out on an arena tour as Kiss, to me, that's a no.
Yeah.
No. Like the Monkees. Didn't the Monkees do that?
I don't think so.
They did. If you go back, the Monkees held an open edition, and they created the New Monkees. What? Go back and look.
Well, I know
it didn't work out.
Okay, I know there was New Deep Purple.
Really?
Yeah, but they did have the original singer before Ian Gillan, and then they got sued, and the original guy lost all his royalties and everything from the first 4 albums. But when Deep Purple broke up in the late 70s, he went out on the road as the New Deep Purple and then got sued.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. But I don't know. I'll have to check about the New Monkees. I never heard that.
Yeah, look into that. And
yeah, big follower.
Yeah, and neither am I. I just know because in this area they had a big. This was many years. I'm talking 20, 30 years ago. They did an open casting call in New York for the New Monkey. And it was just. It's just like when you go on the internet, you go on Blabbermouth or whatever you go on, and they say former AC/DC singer, whatever, Bill Evans. No.
Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, Dave Evans, who only recorded 1 or 2 songs on a 7-inch. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl was his song. And yes, he's the original singer, but he didn't record the debut album.
I mean, just imagine 60 years of your life. That's unbelievable.
That's him right there. He formed the band Rabbit, which was a glam rock group, and did this.
Wow. You know what I'm really impressed with? It's almost like you read my mind that I was going to say something about that, and there you go, reaching for the album. That's great. I just can't imagine some of these guys living their whole life being known as like the guy who couldn't make it in that band.
Hey, what about Pete Best, the drummer that was in the band The Beatles before Ringo Starr? And Pete Best formed the Pete Best combo and basically rode the thing of being the original Beatles drummer, but he never recorded with them or anything. He was the what if guy, the almost, man, you were almost a Beatle.
It's just, that's like one of us.
Yeah.
Like just happen to be somewhere and somebody says, hey, why don't you come on stage and sing a song with Chris Caffrey, and then going back and saying, dude, I was in Savatage for 7 minutes. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
I read recently, I was a Wikipedia article about an artist, and the guitar player is Jack Green. I don't know a lot about him, but he did play rhythm guitar in T-Rex, and he was in some other band. And he spent some years and he recorded albums with them. So, okay, fine. Claim to fame on all of that. We get to the last thing and he's, the top thing says T-Rex and whatever this other band was and Rainbow. I'm like, I do not ever remember this guy from Rainbow. So I read the guy's whole history at Wikipedia. He spent 3 weeks in Rainbow.
It's unreal.
Come on.
It's unbelievable.
Don't even put that on your resume at that point.
And they do the same thing with Chris Holmes from Wasp. that he was in LA Guns for like a month.
Yeah, that's awful. I know. But I guess if it gets them billing, I
Yeah.
understand.
Privately, the next time I see you, remind me to tell you the Chris Holmes story in LA Guns.
All right. I will ask that one. So as sort of a last thing here to wrap this up, because we've been talking about bands changing members, and I've always wondered why people are okay with sports teams changing members. They come in for a few years, you trade this guy over here, you bring in another guy. Sports teams have been around for, I don't know, 100 years. Some of these bands have been, or bands, teams have been around for nearly that long. And that's okay. They just continue and they don't change the names. Why is it that musical artists can't do the same thing? Do you have a thought on that?
I do, and it's probably a sports analogy that goes back to Lake Placid, the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team.
Okay.
Okay. Herb Brooks was the coach,
Mm-hmm.
and it really came about was the name on the front of the jersey is a lot more important than the name on the back. And I think that's why the sports teams get away with it,
Mm-hmm.
because you're rooting more for the uniform than you are for the player. Don't get me wrong. Everybody has a favorite player on the team. If they get traded, they go. But it's very rare that a fan will go with that player. They stick with the team. And I think with music, it's not a team. It's just four people that can create something.
Right.
And I think that's what makes it unique. There's a chemistry between the 4 or 5 or 6 people, how many are in the band. Whereas a team is made up of whatever, 5 to 20 people.
Yeah, plus
there's always interchangeable pieces that'll make you better or worse.
Yeah.
With a band, it's kind of a crapshoot. You don't know if you're going to get better or worse. You know?
I hear that. I see it as like, I'm wondering if that's why Foreigner can be out on the road. No original members. People don't seem to care. It's a brand. And it's like they're interchanging them and they're still, playing big places.
Again, I think it just goes back to people people aren't like you and I. They know the song. They don't know the people who created the song. And I think that's really the difference today. And then I hate to even say it this way. Foreigner's been around a long time.
Yeah.
I mean,
76.
Okay. They're original fans. How many of them are left?
Yeah.
And I hate to put it that way.
It might not be a lot of the original guys going to these shows. It might be a lot of the younger people, like you said. And I do think the biggest part of all of that is the people going to the shows don't know who the members are. I also think they don't care who the members are. They're not duped. They literally don't care. So they don't know if it's an original member. It's not. As far as they're concerned, it's Foreigner. And I want to hear Foreigner songs. And I also think that's the rise in the tribute band. I mean, the tribute band can now sell out. I went and saw Brit Floyd sell out Radio City Music Hall.
Wow.
It's a tribute group. Now, they do an amazing job, full light show, the circular screen, everything that Pink Floyd does, puts on the stage show with actors and everything. So it is Pink Floyd, but it's not.
Yeah.
And yet, they have made a huge career out of it and can totally support themselves just by playing live.
Yeah, and maybe people go support it, maybe like you, because you can't get a ticket to go see Pink Floyd. You can't afford to pay for the ticket to go. No, I mean, I'm just.
It was $900 for a Roger Waters ticket.
It's a lot of money. Today, and it's a hard ticket. Like I've always wanted to go see Pearl Jam. Yeah, I can't get a ticket.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I don't love them I don't want to see them that bad to pay $1,000. Yeah. Or 800, whatever it is, Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrible because there are bands, and I'm sure you feel the same way, bands that you want to see that you haven't had the opportunity to see yet,
Yeah, I would love to see, I have seen Roger Waters. I've never seen David Gilmour, guitar player from Floyd. I'm a big Pink Floyd fan, and I would like to see him solo. I have seen Pink Floyd. I saw them in 1994 at Tampa Stadium. So I did get to have that experience. But you're right. The reason I will accept Brit Floyd, which is a tribute group, is because Pink Floyd isn't out there.
Yeah.
So,
and it's affordable.
Yeah, and it's affordable. You're right. I can go see them for like $80. You know.
That's
Wrapping this whole thing up here, ultimately, there's been so many artists or so many bands that have famous artists that have changed. You know, we didn't touch on it really, but Deep Purple having Richie Blackmore leave, Tommy Bolin comes in, Steve Morse comes in, current guy Simon McBride, right? So there's been some other big major ones, and we touch on Van Halen, and we said, guitar player, the sound, the name, right? Richie Blackmore, Rainbow. All the members kept changing, but it was Richie Blackmore's baby, right?
Mm-hmm.
People followed him and what he did. And then we've got other bands that are out there with no original members, but they're being directed by an original member. So Mick Jones for Foreigner, John Oliva for Savatage. It's kind of a crazy thing, but some fans won't accept it if it's not 100%. And I sort of say, why not? It's just a band growing, morphing, evolving, changing. But I think you and I, in the end of the day, agree that whoever's out on the road and whatever they're doing, and if you're playing it under the official name of the group, you've got to record and release stuff, whether it's a single song or a whole album, but you've got to put something out that is yours. Do not simply be a tribute act and rest on the laurels of the group.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed, 100%.
Everyone out there watching, thanks for tuning in. Definitely leave your comments below. First of all, what big major Notorious lineup change happened that we didn't touch on here? There's so many out there that we could have hit on, But bottom line, of all of these changes in lineups, should they continue? Should they hang it up? Or should they be allowed to keep going no matter how many lineup changes they have? Let us know. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one. Thanks to Vito for joining me here, and I'll see you real soon. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.